Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure with myself, James Cordwell. What's in the programme today? Well, we're continuing what we talked about yesterday. And yesterday we talked about the 15-minute cities, the controls that have been put into place across the country's cities, such as Oxford, Birmingham, Glasgow and London et al. We talked about how cars are now made with kill switches and that infrastructure is in place to find people who move or travel too far from home without a license in place to allow them to do it. This infrastructure is in place in the UK. It's got a lot of names as 15-minute cities. Got a lot of trouble when they tried to name it 15-minute cities in Oxford. So now watch out for Oxford City Council's Legal Plan 2040, or perhaps Birmingham's Reimagining Transport in the West Midlands strategy, Glasgow's planning strategy to decentralise public services, and Greater Manchester's Mayor Andy Burnham's The Places for Everyone Joint Development Plan, which all of them utilise spatial planning designed around either a 15-minute walkable life or a 20-minute walkable neighbourhood. And our very own London Mayor Sadiq Khan's Healthy Streets and Good Growth planning mandates explicitly require new developments to put daily essentials within walking distance. I wonder how many people voted for, well, any of that. Different name, same thing. It's a prison, or it calls it a 15-minute utopia. Well, I believe it will be a dystopia, and I believe it's the dystopia talked about in the Bible, in the end times. Different names, but same thing. And it's quite clear that the very things they wanted during lockdown, in the last fiasco of a pandemic, are the very things you see in these 50 or 20-minute virtual prisons they are planning for our major cities. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. There is one group of politicians who have embraced the idea that the world needs saving, mostly from us, the consumers, aka you and me, and the idea that centralised control is the very best thing. Well, that's the left wing. In the past, being left wing was all about workers' rights, and it was needed. But now everything has shifted somewhat, and left wing now means, well, saving the planet from the workers who are ruining it for the elites. Well, the communists, of course, in Russia tried centralised control, and it nearly ruined them. It failed then, and now the Chinese Communist Party, much praised, I should say, by the UN, the WEF and the WHO, all these international bodies, are controlling everything and everyone in China, locking everyone up when they want to. Now, lately, though, it is much closer to home. It's here in the UK. Now it's the left-wing government here in the UK that loves centralised control, got to keep the workers in their place, and they have mixed up the nation so much that everyone forgets what it's like to be British or French or German. The C40 cities are the latest invention to solve an imaginary problem, and our attempt to avoid the catastrophe that is supposedly coming because of climate change. One lie leads to another. The imagined climate catastrophe leads to something that looks like a lockdown, and we are left with a C40 city. All you need for life is available in 15 minutes, regulated food and a bed for the masses, for as long as you can continue to be able to afford it. You will own nothing, but apparently you will be happy. When has that ever been the truth in your life? Tell me, have you ever had a period of your life where you've owned nothing and you were just happy? Well, take a look at another part of the documentary, the 15-minute smart cities or 15-minute smart prisons that we've been watching over the past day. Take a look at this.
And now, they have taken it several notches higher with the C40 cities.
And then the next thing is the C40 cities. Some of you may not be aware of that. You think about the 15-minute cities being spearheaded by the C40 cities. The C40 cities refer to cities around the world. They initially were about 40 of them. They've added more now. So even though the name hasn't changed from C40, but they've added more. So which city in your country belongs to the club of the C40 cities? Their policies stand for imprisonment and impoverishment. Ever heard the slogan? You'll have nothing, but you'll be happy. That's the push towards an antichrist society as described in the Bible. That's the promise of the Antichrist. You'll have nothing and you'll be happy. That's his promise.
But of course, the World Economic Forum has a plan for this as well. And they say that in the future, and they're talking about by the year 2030, this is where their big tagline comes in that you'll have no doubt heard many times before: you will own nothing and be happy. And for those skeptics among you who say these 15-minute cities, they're never going to happen, well, let me ask you this question. Have you ever heard of C40 cities? Because there are 97 of these cities that currently exist around the world. And again, don't get me wrong, some of these cities are very enviable. They are nice cities to live in. However, if you look at some of the cities championed by the C40 network of mayors, LA, Paris, London, for example, the promotional material and the videos and all the other stuff that they make and the surveys is completely skewed. They completely omit the fact that yes, you can have an amazing life in these cities if you're in the top 0.1% or even the 1%. But if you're in the other 99%, then it's a very difficult and hard life.
So the plan is to dispossess you of your assets and inconvenience you in so many ways until you are adjusted such a way as to even ask for what they're handing out to you. There's so much inconvenience in many cities to drive your car today that it seems easier to go without your car. What are they doing? They are prepping you, programming you to do without your car. They're programming you. They're making it as difficult as possible for you to use a car. Make it as expensive as possible.
In fact, the aim of the C40s is to eradicate all cars from all cities altogether, which is extremely worrying. And the reason is, of course, it's going to be for our sustainable future. It's avoiding the catastrophe that's supposed to be coming to the planet, and all this nonsense that we've heard dished out time and time again.
The 15-minute cities is something that the WEF has created called C40, and it's called C40 cities. Basically, you won't be able to drive a petrol or diesel car anymore. You'll have to buy electric.
In private car ownership, which is why we're all being encouraged to produce the electric cars, that we won't have enough electricity to run anyways, because you don't need electricity if you actually don't get to own a car. And if the goal is a 95% reduction in private automobile ownership, then it doesn't matter if there's no damn grid.
But the car is just one of them. There are other things. There are other things.
Can you imagine? Look, to me, everything's based on a false premise. The climate catastrophe to come. Let me ask you something. Is there a climate catastrophe here in the UK? Have you felt air quality was an issue over the last, say, 10 or 20 years? No. Yes, we lost one person who you could argue that she had respiratory issues anyway, and she died. But that's the only documented death that we've had. Now, in the last 20 years, we did monitor, in fact, we did here, Love World UK. We went out on the streets of London and we monitored the actual CO2 content, the pollution content, different particulates content. We could find no pollution anywhere, even on a busy street with cars running up and down it. Why? Because cars these days are much cleaner than they were before. We did find one area where pollution levels were so severe that it came up red, warning, don't be in this area. This was the underground stations that the government is trying to push everybody onto. Those are the only places where pollution exists in London today. I mean air pollution. So C40, what is it? It's built on the premise that a climate disaster is happening, which I don't accept. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail in the program. But it's built on that premise. Then we have a 15-minute city. A 15-minute city is a result of the desire to avoid the catastrophe. Everything is within your walking distance. You don't need a car. So have you ever driven a car in London these days? It's almost impossible. You can't park anywhere without paying. Your fuel is expensive. Your tax is expensive. The congestion zones are expensive. It's difficult to move around. It's not difficult to move around because of the numbers of cars. It's difficult because everywhere is expensive. Petrol, prices of parking, et al. It's just expensive. Insurance is expensive. Everything is more and more and more expensive. They are trying to get rid of cars, and they will keep on making it worse. The wars that are around the world today, which are saying, okay, the Strait of Hormuz, that could be solved tomorrow by America and Europe working together. What has Iran got that it could stop us from making that passageway open? What has it got? What has it got left that could stop us? So they could solve it. The war in Ukraine, they could solve it tomorrow if they really, really wanted. Russia is losing. Right now, it is losing. Losing many, many men and land, in fact, in the last month alone. All because technology has moved on, Starlink has been removed, but they could stop that war tomorrow if they wanted to. There was simply no political desire to do so in Europe. So you're looking at like these C40 cities. Sadiq Khan is one of the co-chairs of that particular organization. It's a global organization, and by 2030, they will also subscribe to this idea that you will own nothing in a city and you will be happy. You think you'll own your house in a city? The elites might. The people who can really afford things might. But everybody else should be renting. I'm telling you, this is transforming the way our world is being organized by the minute. We've told you in that program there were 96 member countries as members of the C40, headed by the co-chair, our wonderful Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. This includes LA, Paris and London. Collectively, these cities are around about, 920 million people, or maybe account for roughly 23% of the global economy. Big cities have a lot of people in them. Wonderful places to live as long as you can afford it. The plan will be to drive you out of your cars and into those dirty undergrounds, the public transport system, because you don't need to go far. Only 15 minutes from your front door, anywhere in London. Can you imagine? You can't see Hyde Park if you're not within 15 minutes of it. You can't see Buckingham Palace because you're not within 15 minutes of it. How easy would it be to stop you seeing all of that if digital ID and central bank digital currencies come in, because you won't be able to pay to get there. You won't be able to pay to see these things if they set boundaries that you can't leave your 15-minute zone. What kind of life is that? I remember one of the videos from yesterday, it was basically quite clear that if you live as a chicken in a chicken coop, and you can live in there, you're happy, you're warm, you've got housing, you've got food, you've got water, they'll take you out to see a vet if you need to, but put you back in your chicken coop. What is the difference between that and a C40 city? Nothing. If you can't afford it, you can't have it. And if you can't buy things because you're not allowed to buy things, there's no difference at all. Now, Pastor in that program, Pastor Chris, he said, the plan is, in fact, to dispose you of your assets, your rights and your liberty, I will add. Now, the workers, if necessary, the workers will only be allowed, this is like the 80% or 90% of the city populations, will only be allowed to fly once a year. Why do you think we are rebuilding the armies, air forces and navies of Western Europe right now? Germany moved to, 4%, and they planned 6% in a year. Is it 5% by next year, 6% the year after that? UK have promised billions to rebuilding their armies, air force and navy. Why? Please don't buy into the idea that it's a threat from Russia. Russia can't even beat Ukraine on its own, and soon will be pushed out of Ukraine if something doesn't significantly change in the way the war is going. No, it's really to prepare for the mass rebellion that maybe one day will take place. And people are herded into these 15 or 20-minute gulags finally realize their liberty and freedom have been taken from them. Their ability to buy or sell will by then be digital, and any form of resistance will be met with a swift push of an electronic button by the AI agent set to the task of monitoring the people in the gulags, and will turn off their access to money at the least objection. By then, they will be able to isolate anyone for as long as they want. Cars, well, they plan to eliminate any or all private car ownership, with then only maybe 90% of the car use a distant memory. That's another WEF policy right there being implemented because the WEF wants it. Who put the WEF in charge of anything? Did you vote for this billionaires club to have such clout over our own politicians? Why is it that the politicians are buying into this idea based on the false premise of a climate disaster looming? One thing based on another thing, based on another thing, based on a lie. Did you vote for this? There are 700 million CCTV surveillance cameras in China. This massive network translates to an average of roughly 1 camera for every 2 citizens in the country. How many are there in London, do you think? In the UK? Well, the UK has one of the most extensive CCTV networks globally, with an estimated 4 to 6 million cameras in operation. And this translates to approximately 16 to 24 cameras per square kilometre, with the vast majority operated by what we know as the private sector rather than local authorities. There are 90,000 public authority cameras in the UK, with roughly 16,000 to 20,000 managed directly by London councils. Big Brother is really watching you. But did you vote for this? Did you vote to be watched so much? Well, let's take another clip from the particular documentary that we're watching. Take a look at this.
I looked into the C40 websites. The C40 is the consortium of municipalities that have signed on to the 15-minute city plan. And I read in their own documentation, this is relevant to the tri-state city idea, that their goals are to reduce caloric consumption to 2,500 calories a day by force, essentially, within the next 15 years, to ensure that the peasant class, which is everybody but the elitists, can't fly more than 1 time every 3 years, to not merely shift private car ownership from fossil fuel to electric, which is fundamentally impossible because the grid can't handle it, but to eliminate 90% of private car ownership so that people are forced to take, unbelievably expensive in terms of time utilization and non-existent public transportation systems, and to limit the amount of travel that people can do outside of their neighborhoods. And, and then I watch the legacy media claim that pointing that out is something akin to a right-wing conspiracy, which it most certainly isn't, because you can just find the documentation online. And then I look at places like China, which have taken this to an extreme. 600 million closed-circuit TV cameras in China. 1 for every 1.5 persons watching the Chinese all the time, able to monitor them 100% by face, and also to identify them by gait, and to limit their ability to do absolutely anything, to buy, to sell, to travel, to move, to leave their neighborhood, with this top-down surveillance system that perversely and consciously some of the Chinese engineers have actually named Skynet. And you can't even talk about this stuff without sounding like a raving conspiratorialist, but there it is.
Listen to Klaus Schwab, who says by 2030, meat will be for the rich and very wealthy for special occasions only. You with that? Again, on their own website, 16 kilograms, that's all you can have of meat. Right now, the dairy consumption, milk or derivative equivalent, so cheeses and everything else, they're hoping that you will only have 90 kilograms of that, but their aggressive, ambitious target for 2030 is 0. Now remember, they need you to live like we lived in the pandemic, except without the nice stuff that you might have had, like cheese and milk and meat in the pandemic. you'll be required to only have 2,500 calories a day. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could live on 2,500 calories. Now, when it comes to clothing, clothing is a problem, okay? We have too many clothes. And I personally, I've watched television. I don't think we have enough clothes, quite frankly. So their progressive target for 2030 is that people will only be allowed to have 8 new clothing items per person per year. But they really are shooting for 3. So, comrade, you could have a new shirt, a new pair of pants, and maybe some socks. Merry Christmas.
I mean, you could say, okay, that's a bit extreme, right? Is it? Is it? If C40 cities and 15-minute or 20-minute neighborhoods and digital ID and central bank digital currencies, all these pillars based on the false premise of a climate disaster is coming, if we are seeing them today, the things that they are talking about in the World Economic Forum, how? How is this happening? Why is it happening? Did you vote for digital ID in your own country? Did you vote for central bank digital currencies in your own country? Did you vote for any of this? Did somebody say it would be a good idea if London is broken up into neighbourhoods and you only really need to work around within your 15-minute little area, neighbourhood? You can work there, live there, eat there, sleep there. Who said that was a good idea? The WEF said that was a good idea. They talked to the Mayor of London and suddenly the Mayor of London thinks it's a good idea. They talked to Andy Burnham and suddenly the Mayor of Manchester thinks it's a good idea. And then you see the infrastructure in place to implement it, being put in place. Why do you think we've got 5G everywhere in the country? Is it so that you can watch mobile videos on the go? Are you that naive that you think that all this infrastructure was so that we could watch movies at home, on demand, all this kind of stuff? Do you think that's what it's really there for? Do you really believe that the country has enough money to do it for that purpose? Or perhaps they're putting it in place so with the 5G network, they can actually identify every individual, tracking every individual transaction, every individual action, every individual meeting, everything at all, like China. Do you know China was lauded by the UN, the WHO, and the World Economic Forum, and everybody loved what they did during the pandemic. And yet there's a possibility between them and the Americans that they started the pandemic. It's never come to light. No truth seems to come to the surface in this country, in any country, ever since the pandemic started. They are playing with you. They play with your food. They play with your services. They make it all convenient. You can access public services with a digital ID. I could do that before. What am I getting that's any better? I have a national ID card. I don't want a national ID card. I've got my passport. I've got my driver's license. I've got all sorts of certifications, including my birth certificate. I don't need it. Is it perhaps that they need it, that they want it to be implemented this way? We're living in a very dangerous world. Like I say, I want to repeat this. The false premise of a climate disaster has driven a number of actions that are coming. 15-minute cities, digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, and C40 cities. All of these are lies based on the big lie of climate change, climate disaster. Netherlands is only 2 or 3 inches above sea level, and yet it's still there. They keep saying the sea levels will rise. They keep saying it was going to be too hot and we won't be able to live anywhere. They keep saying all of these things, but we don't see any evidence that anybody in the world is affected by anything other than bad planning. There is no massive insurance claims for deaths around the world because of climate change. Only bad planning, bad city designs. They are going to force us out of the countryside and into these cities. You're going to say you can only work within your 15-minute city. What work do you think you could find within 15 minutes of your home today? I take something like 40 minutes to drive in. And I prefer that than public transport, which takes me something like 1 hour and 40 minutes. So it's a choice to save my life's time in a day. I don't want to spend 2 more hours than I need to be in the car, on public transport. I'd rather use my car. There is no alternative. We know the only places that is poor air quality is in the underground. And that seems to be, in London at least, where everybody is being directed onto public transport. Do you really think this infrastructure that's in place in all these cities is there because somebody in Manchester thought it was a good idea, or somebody in London or somebody in Glasgow thought it was a good idea, or somebody in Oxford thought it was a good idea? I'm telling you the truth. The idea, the original idea, came from the World Economic Forum, whose bosses have been disgraced, found to have broken the law, found to have relationships with rather unhealthy people like Jeffrey Epstein. These are the people who generated this idea. Klaus Schwab, the big book, You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy, is being implemented. How? Why? What happened? Did you vote for the WEF? Did somebody give them authority? Our Prime Minister said, I'd prefer to go to the WEF. I prefer to go to them because it's a nicer, more relaxed environment. You can have a conversation. He finds it toxic in Parliament. It's only toxic because you don't do what you say. You lie and you cheat your way through life, and then you find yourself doing exactly the same thing you criticised the previous administration for doing. You're mixing up the nations because why? You're hiding the fact that our birth rates have plummeted. Something has gone seriously wrong with almost every part of the food production process. Something serious has gone wrong with health. And yet, all the things that you need, this is why I can't understand why people can't see it. Every time we look at a C40 city or 15-minute city plan, and they've all got different names now, but you see the kind of things they wanted to do during the lockdown but couldn't. They want to control access. Oxford is a classic example. This segmented city, these gateways into different segments, and they monitor them. Why do you think 5G is there? Would 3G have worked? No, it didn't have the bandwidth. 5G is both ways. You can download movies and they can upload your life because it's that fast, it's that capable, and it's going to be 6G soon. Is it just for movies? Or is it a bigger thing, a bigger picture in question? Well, I believe it's coming. The C40 cities, digital IDs, and CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, are coming. 3 big lies based on the big lie of climate change. Let's take another little bit of this particular video. It's different parts of the same plan. Take a look.
If you violate any of these things, they'll freeze your bank account. That is the next step. These are stages in which they're going to implement this stuff. And this was signed up by the WEF, and the WEF has signed up with our mayor in London as the chair. And he has gone around the world to communicate this C40 to all of the countries in the world. And most of the countries are looking at adopting it. Now, I am going to abolish it. It is a hopeless position. We are going to be in an open prison, or shall we say a COVID, for the rest of our lives. We will not be able to work unless it's in our 15-minute city. It's diabolical. It's not this is not the right thing. And it's been hidden from the public. No one's talking about it.
So they make life so difficult for you until you give up and accept the kind of life they want you to live as slaves under them. Because they will run the government that they are planning to install. They will run that government. And since they will abolish elections, you can't remove them. So they become permanent. So they're creating a monarchy of some sort without saying it's a monarchy. So imagine a world where Klaus Schwab becomes king and Guterres becomes his chief advisor. What a world. What a world. What a world. But if you're not watchful, you won't realize that that's actually what they want. That's what they want. But they are not about to get it. I have news for them. They're not about to get what they want. This is not their day. This is not their day. This is an effort in vain. It's an effort in vain. Let me show you the future of those cities they plan to build. So he says, then the seventh angel poured out his flask into the air, and a mighty shout came from the throne of the temple in heaven, saying, it is finished. Then the thunder crashed and rolled, and lightning flashed, and there was a great earthquake of a magnitude unprecedented in human history. I want you to mark that. This is Revelation chapter 16, verse 18, giving you a record ahead of time of the biggest and the most terrible and most destructive earthquake in human history. He has told you before the time. Look at the cities. And the cities around the world fell in heaps of rubble. This earthquake destroyed all of them. Why did they have to be destroyed? Because they were built on the blood of other men. With the destruction of human lives. The murderous agenda that they had. And they built all these cities.
He catches the wise in their own craftiness, and the schemes of the wily are brought to a quick end. Job 5:13.
You know, I've got to say thank you to Pastor Chris for bringing such scriptures to our remembrance. But when you see something in the Bible that talks about things like you cannot trade, you cannot eat, you cannot buy or sell things without the mark of the beast, and it's placed in the right hand or on the forehead, the mark of the beast. And you see that they are doing what the Bible has said is coming. They're doing it today. They're trying to implement schemes like this. You wonder, don't you? You have to wonder if it looks like and smells like and looks like exactly what we've been warned about, then perhaps it is exactly what we've been warned about. Everybody's entitled to an opinion, and you're entitled to your own opinion. You're entitled to do your own research. Pastors talked about this ad infinitum to actually tell you to make sure you go and find out about things. Like this new virus that they found on cruise liners. It sounds so much like Legionnaire's disease, because I go back over 40 years of reading news, right? And cruises especially are really susceptible to this kind of Legionnaire's outbreaks on ships, because they're all living in a very short little area, little space. Rather like a small 15-minute city to some extent. And if you remember the previous videos from yesterday, like living in a chicken coop. Everything's in there for you. You can't leave. It's safe and warm and you've got food. But because you're all in a very small space, disease tends to run around if you're not completely clear and understand the importance of cleanliness, good diet. And do you remember the previous video we saw? It said, well, meat will only be for the elite at some point. This is coming out the same organization, WEF, that said we need 15-minute cities. That said we need central bank digital currencies and we need digital ID. And they also said you're going to have meat but only for the elite. I know that Bill Gates has, I think it's a McDonald's gold card. He never has to pay for McDonald's again. And again, I've seen videos on, different social media websites saying, I bought this burger from McDonald's and I've left it there for 3 months, and then they go and have a look at it on camera. And it's no different to, it's a bit drier, but other than that, it's not gone mouldy. When does food not go mouldy in 3 months? The answer is when it's not real food. How many times have you seen them making stuff out of rubbish and selling it to you in the stores? Something with emulsifiers in it. Bread especially, the government said every bread in the UK has got to have emulsifiers in it. What are they? Well, you take bread which is not fit for human consumption, bread which is the lowest of all the scales of, not bread, sorry, flour, all the lowest scales, and you put emulsifiers in it, at least it can be bound together into bread. But if you take bread and you can set it alight these days, it seems to not dissolve in water. There's stuff that they've produced that we think is, well, what can you do with an egg? It's just an egg, right? I don't trust them anymore. I need to know when I buy food that it's coming from a reasonable, well-managed source. They've messed with our food. They're messing with our heads mostly, but they're saying that climate disaster is the driving force behind all this. Cities need to be reorganized. Coming out the WEF, Klaus Schwab, cities need to be reorganized because of the climate disaster that's coming. It's so impossible to explain without going to so many numbers. But I'm going to give it a little bit of, I'm going to give you some data. Let me repeat this. The C40 cities, digital ID, and the CBDCs. 3 lies based on the big lie about climate change. I ask you this, if climate change was real and an imminent threat, why has China been allowed to build nearly 5,000 coal mines? 5,000 coal mines in China. China extracts 4.3 to 4.4 million barrels of crude oil per day from its own fields. 4.3 to 4.4 million barrels of crude oil. Oil. Just stop oil, please listen. And that's only 30% of its annual consumption. That's daily. It imports the rest. That's about 15 million barrels per day. Remember, 4 to 5 of it is internal, but it imports something like 10 to 11 million barrels per day, every day, to feed the machines, the industry that the West have demanded it produces. We don't do it in the UK. We do a little bit in Europe, but we don't do it in the UK. The UK has no coal mines, none, 0. And it imports 1.4 million barrels a day for consumption from our European allies who get it out of the North Sea. But we don't touch the North Sea anymore because the big lie, climate catastrophe coming, and net zero. And yet, we are to be managed. We, us, here in the UK. Not the 5,000 coal mines in China. It doesn't make any sense to anybody if it's a global catastrophe of climate. I'm not even talking to you about India. But we, the people of the UK, this is planned. It's being implemented. It's been put into place. We are to be managed in what I can only call gulags, 15-minute gulags. We're going to be monitored. If it was free and you could easily walk around and go where you liked, you wouldn't need to monitor, would you? You wouldn't need to analyze, would you? But we are going to be monitored, analyzed, and reported on, all via our very convenient 5G plus networks that are in those zones right now. The infrastructure is there. To me, it's the end of civilization as we know it. All 3 elements coming together to focus on population control and population reduction. You know, as a child, I used to love travel. I'd get on my bike and I'd cycle from Manchester to Huddersfield and back in about 4 hours. I'd take my bicycle all the way across the Pennines. I would go everywhere. It's called freedom. It's what we fight wars for. It's really important that nobody is watching us when we do it, monitoring us, analysing us, taking notes, deciding on decisions about whether we should be doing it or not, because that, my friends at home, is not freedom. Is it? You're like a chicken in a chicken coop that can move between your little friends within there. Once the door's open, you can go up to the boundary, and that's it. Is that, even if it was, why would anybody on this earth want to live like that? So the big lie of climate change, the big lie of climate catastrophes, even though you and I can see around us, nothing to that regard anywhere on the earth, because there'd be massive insurance claims, and there isn't. The number of deaths due to climate disasters around the world is falling year on year. It's almost not even measurable now. Something else is happening out here in our world, and we have to really, really wake up and see what's happening. If it smells like a lockdown, if it looks like a lockdown, and it kind of controls you like a lockdown, then perhaps it is a lockdown or a lockup. If you're living in cities like now which have these plans in place, Oxford, I know you're in uproar. Just because they change the name of it doesn't change what it is. You are a guinea pig in a very big kind of like eternal war. The Antichrist is working in this country, and I can see it, because this country is doing the same thing France is doing. It's the same thing Germany is doing. It's the same thing Spain is doing. It's the same thing Italy is doing. It's the same thing everywhere in the world is planning on. Who coordinated all that? The Antichrist spirit is working in this world. But whilst we, the Church of Jesus Christ, are still on this earth, there is hope that we will not allow them. We will not allow this. We will say no to this. They will be forced to live in a world of our design, not theirs. So you at home, me as well, everybody watching has to reject these changes and speak our world, the one that we desire, into existence. It works. When we decided to finally unite in this country and say LGBT, no, you can't go into different sex spaces. I'm sorry. You can live the way you want. You can live whatever life you desire. I won't penalize you for doing it. But if my child is in a female-only toilet, I expect her to be safe. And I'm entitled to my opinion. It says legally only because I have a Christian mind. I can't say my decision is based on biology, because there are many professors in this country right now forced to admit that biology is no protection when it comes to this particular subject. Obvious physical biology is no protection, but the only protection I have is a religious fervour, a religious idea. So I say again, we have to reject these changes, and we have to speak our world into an existence that we want. Because the world that they envisage with C40 cities, 15-minute regions, central bank digital currencies and digital ID is a world that we have declared as already dead. Well, that's my time up. I hope you've enjoyed the program. This is Full Disclosure with James Cordwell. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for watching the program. Take care.
Alan 24, the Global News Authority.
Hello and welcome to Breaking News at this moment in time. My name, of course, is James Cordwell. Let's take a quick look at the lead stories. Well, the next tranche of the Mandelson Files will be the biggest publication of Parliament since the Chilcot inquiry into the Iraq War, Downing Street has just announced. Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister, said that more than 300 documents related to Lord Mandelson's appointment had been released to MPs. But in a statement to the Commons, he also repeatedly refused to comment or commit to publishing the papers before the Makerfield by-election on June the 18th. Interesting, huh? Well, the Chilcot inquiry, which looked at Britain's involvement in the Iraq War, took 7 years to complete and ran to more than 6,000 pages. Now, officials said that the Mandelson Files would be substantially shorter than that, but would still be the second biggest publication to Parliament ever. Mr Jones told the Commons this will be the largest publication other than the Chilcot inquiry after published to the House. It constitutes a very significant disclosure exercise involving sensitive material from across government. Sir Keir Starmer faces a leadership battle prompted by this very scandal over his decision to hire Lord Mandelson as ambassador to the US. The backlash over the peer's appointment provoked widespread anger amongst Labour MPs and prompted the first moves against the Prime Minister from within his own cabinet. Now, Sir Keir is now facing the prospect of a leadership challenge from Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who is currently running to return to Parliament, assuming that he can win that by-election. I wonder if that has got anything to do with the delayed publication. Millions of households across the United Kingdom could soon face higher energy bills too after regulators approved plans aimed at helping suppliers recover unpaid customer debts. Now, under the proposals, average annual bills are expected to rise by around £75 a year as energy companies attempt to cover mounting losses linked to struggling households falling behind on payments. Industry leaders say the increase reflects growing financial pressure across the sector following years of high inflation and rising living costs. Now, energy firms have warned of what they describe as an emerging culture of non-payment, with unpaid household energy debt now reaching record levels. Consumer groups, however, argue that many families simply cannot afford rising bills and have called for greater government support instead of passing additional costs onto customers who continue to pay on time. Analysts say the proposed increases could further intensify concerns over the cost of living ahead of the winter months ahead, particularly for low and middle income households already facing severe financial strain. Now, former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon is facing growing political pressure after MSPs demanded she come clean over what she knew about the misuse of SNP funds linked to her husband, Peter Murrell. The calls follow claims that around £400,000 was improperly used, with critics challenging Sturgeon's insistence that she was simply unaware party money had allegedly been spent on luxury furnishings and personal items for their own home. Opposition politicians say serious questions remain over financial oversight within the SNP during Sturgeon's leadership, whilst party officials continue to face scrutiny over accounting practices and or donations. Sturgeon has repeatedly denied wrongdoing and maintains she had no knowledge of any improper spending. The controversy has intensified pressure on the SNP leadership ahead of future elections, with analysts warning the continuing investigation could damage further public confidence in the SNP party in Scotland. Now, even as talks proceed, US forces on Monday conducted strikes in southern Iran against targets including boats attempting to lay mines and missile launch sites in what it describes as defensive actions. Now, Brent crude futures, of course, what do you expect, rose 2% in early Asian trading on Tuesday as tensions between the US and Iran persisted. Elevated crude oil prices can fuel inflation and keep interest rates higher for longer. Whilst gold is seen as a hedge against inflation, higher rates tend to weigh on the non-yielding metal too. Well, it's been rather hot here in the UK, as you can imagine. We don't deal with it very well. Rail passengers bear the brunt. Now, rail passengers across parts of southern England face major disruption after record-breaking temperatures triggered delays and cancellations on several key transport routes. Services on Southern Western Railway and the Elizabeth line were amongst those affected most as temperatures climbed to the highest levels ever recorded in May, placing pressure on rail infrastructure and signalling systems which are simply not used to them. Commuters were warned to expect delays throughout the day as operators introduced speed restrictions to reduce the risk of track damage. Weather forecasters said temperatures rose above 32 degrees in May, Celsius, of course, in some areas, surpassing previous May records and raising fresh concerns over the impact of extreme heat on public transport